Alright everybody, in this video we're going to look at what the modified topics are for the BC Calculus exam for this year. The College Board has released that there will be an alternative AP exam available, and they've decided with the interruption due to coronavirus that we will have some concepts that are on the course description that will not be tested on this alternate exam. So I'm going to go through and look at the topics for AP Calculus BC and talk to you about which ones you will be on this exam and which ones won't. Okay, so starting from the top. Limits and continuity, Unit 1, all of that material is eligible to be asked about on the modified exam. So everything about limits and continuity that you would need to know, that's all there. Alright, second unit. Differentiation, the definition of the derivative and basic derivative rules. Again, this is all material that is going to be asked about on the BC Calculus exam. Things related to the definition of the derivative and the most basic derivative rules, which hopefully by this point in time you guys don't need to worry much about those. You know, the power rule and all the trig functions and exponentials and logarithms and the constant sum difference, constant multiple rules, product rule, quotient rule, that all falls into this unit, and that is all stuff that they will possibly ask you about on the modified exam this year. Next unit is Unit 3, more complicated derivative rules, the chain rule, using implicit differentiation, finding derivatives of inverse functions, inverse trigonometric functions, selecting how you want to calculate a derivative, being able to use all of these rules in conjunction with one another, and which rule gets used where in the process, and also over here calculating higher order derivatives, finding the second derivative, third derivative, etc., etc. That is all material that they could ask about on this year's BC Calculus exam. Alright, next, Unit 4, applications of differentiation. And you can kind of read the different concepts that fall into this unit there. Rates of change in contexts other than motion, rates of change related to motion, related rates, local linearity, linearization, and L'Hopital's rule are all things that fall into Unit 4, and they are all things that they might ask you about on this year's BC Calculus exam. So all of the content there is, again, eligible to show up on the modified exam this year. Unit 5, applications of differentiation, the more analytical ones, the mean value theorem, excuse me, the extreme value theorem, the difference between global and local extrema, finding critical points, figuring out increasing, decreasing. We've got the first and second derivative tests for extrema in there. We've got the fact that we can use the local extrema to find the absolute extrema. We've got concavity of functions, sketching graphs using the function and its derivatives, the connection between the function, first derivative and second derivative, and also optimization falls into this unit, and the exploring of behaviors of implicit relations falls into this unit as well. That is, again, all eligible content to show up on the BC Calculus Modified exam this year. On to Unit 6, integration and accumulation of change. Everything on this page is eligible to be asked about on the BC Calculus exam. Riemann sums, the connection between Riemann sum and the integral, fundamental theorem of calculus, interpretation of accumulation functions, definite integrals, finding antiderivatives, the basic rules and the notation behind those, integration using substitution, integration using long division and completing the square, things that we need to simplify algebraically in order to integrate, integration by parts, partial fractions, linear partial fractions specifically, their focus is, and evaluating improper integrals, and then being able to select the correct techniques for anti-differentiation, recognizing this is a problem where I need to integrate using substitution, this is a problem where I need to integrate using integration by parts, This is a problem where I need to use partial fractions, etc., etc. So all of Unit 6 is going to be on the modified BC exam. Unit 7, same thing. The entire unit is eligible to be asked about on the BC exam, using differential equations, verifying their solutions, sketching and reasoning based on slope fields, Euler's method to find approximate solutions, finding general solutions with separation of variables, finding a particular solution using an initial condition and separation of variables, exponential models with differential equations, and the one that's been in the news a lot lately, the logistic models with differential equations. These last two topics, you see a great deal of them being used in practice with what's going on right now with the coronavirus issue, because viruses begin exponential and eventually settle into a logistic model. But I'm not here to teach you about that right now. I'm just telling you what's eligible to be on your exam. So all of this unit is eligible to be on your exam. Unit 8, applications of integration. Again, this entire unit is eligible to be asked about on the BC exam. Finding average value, the connection between position, velocity, and acceleration using integrals, accumulation functions in applied contexts, area between curves, either as functions of x or functions of y, area between curves with multiple intersection points, more than 2, cross-sectional volumes, volumes of revolution, disks, washers, and then the last one here, which is a BC only topic, the arc length and distance traveled along a smooth planar curve. So everything in Unit 8 is eligible to be asked about on the modified BC exam. Now here's where it gets interesting. Unit 9, parametric, polar, and vector valued functions. BC only topic usually. This entire unit is not going to be asked about on the modified BC calculus exam. So we can take that one right off, scratch those. Anything related to parametric, polar, and vector valued functions will not be asked about on the AP exam. Of course, we're still learning it because it's an important part of a second-year calculus course, and as usual, I'm running ahead of schedule, and so you guys have done most of this already, and we're just going to finish it off, even though it's not going to be on your AP calculus exam. All right. And now the last unit is where it gets a little interesting here, the last unit in their breakdown, Unit 10, part of which is eligible to be asked about and part of which is not. We're going to highlight and look at which things are eligible and which are not. There are 5 sections, 5 topics from Unit 10 that they've said they will be asking questions about. Number 1, this second section, working with geometric series. That is on the exam. Then there's 10.5, the harmonic series, and P series. So we should know all about those things. Section number 7, the alternating series test for convergence has been indicated as eligible. 10.8, the ratio test for convergence. This is one of those eligible sections. And 10.11, finding Taylor polynomial approximations and functions. All right, so these are all eligible to be asked about on this year's BC calculus exam. So you want to be able to find Taylor polynomials. You want to be able to test convergence using harmonic series and P series. Although I noticed that they say 10.6 is not going to appear on there, which is where we use the comparison tests for convergence. So I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but maybe they just want us to be able to identify P series and whether they converge or not. And then the alternating series test and ratio test for convergence. So I imagine they're potentially going to ask you about some alternating series or some series in general, and you need to be able to prove their convergence or divergence using those tests. So the rest of these sections have been stricken from the record for this year's BC Calculus exam. The nth term test. Wow. I would think you can use that since we know it. Now the thing is you guys know all of these things and the interrelationship between all of these things. So if there's a little bit of blur between the lines of some of these things, hopefully you're well prepared with everything that we've done in the course. Notice two things that we're striking out here: alternating series error bound and the Lagrange error bound. So those of you who have Lagrangian anxiety, you won't need to worry about using the Lagrange error bound. And then these last couple here are stricken as well. So that's everything that is going to potentially appear on this year's BC Calculus exam. I hope going through that for you is beneficial to you, and we're going to focus our review on this when we begin reviewing for the AP exam in a couple of weeks. All right, I hope this was helpful. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.